She was shivering at the bus stop, hunched against the bitter wind, her scrubs barely shielding her from the cold. 12 hours on her feet, double shift, understaffed, and running on caffeine and adrenaline. The hospital was chaos, but out here, it was just silence, exhaustion, and loneliness. She had no car, no one to call, and not enough money for a ride home. Just another night where survival came before comfort. That's when he pulled up. He wasn't flashy. No designer suit or arrogant smirk. Just a man in a warm coat and eyes that really saw her. A quiet pause. A rolled-down window. And then 4 words that changed everything. "You're coming with me." Startled, she hesitated, until he held out a thermos of hot tea and pointed to the passenger seat, where a heated blanket was already waiting. It wasn't just the warmth of his car that thawed her guard, it was the sincerity in his voice. He didn't see her as a problem. He saw her as a person. That ride home turned into a conversation. Which turned into a meal, which turned into something neither of them expected. A bond, built on kindness. Respect. Hope. He didn't want anything from her, he simply refused to leave her freezing and unseen. And she, in turn, reminded him what real strength looked like. Weeks later, she was no longer waiting at bus stops. She had a new job, a new place, and a man who never tried to save her, just stand beside her. Because sometimes, the most powerful rescue doesn't come with sirens or spotlights. Sometimes, it starts with 4 quiet words and a warm seat beside someone who believes you matter. Miracle Moments TV, where compassion creates a future, she thought no one saw her. Just another nurse finishing a graveyard shift, invisible to the world, standing alone at the bus stop in the freezing dark. Her scrubs were damp from the snow, her hands trembling, and her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She had given everything during those long hours. Comforting patients, rushing through codes, working through her own pain, only to be left with nothing but the cold. Then a car pulled up. The man behind the wheel didn't look like someone who'd stop. A tailored coat. A quiet confidence. A luxury SUV humming with warmth. But he saw her, really saw her. Without pity. Without judgment. He stepped out, wrapped a thick coat around her shoulders, and said gently, "You don't need to wait out here anymore." She hesitated, confused, guarded, unsure. But something in his eyes told her it wasn't charity. It was care. So she got in the car. What began as a simple ride turned into a long conversation over coffee. Then another. Then a dinner. Then an invitation to stay, just until she got back on her feet. But what unfolded was more than temporary shelter. It was a rediscovery of worth. Of rest. Of being seen. She taught him about quiet courage. He reminded her that she didn't have to survive alone. Slowly, walls came down, hearts opened up, and 2 very different lives began to merge. Today, she no longer stands in the cold, she stands in a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of love that only grows from empathy. He had wealth. A name people respected, a house with rooms he never used, and a calendar full of meetings, but not moments. His life was polished, structured, and empty. No one to come home to. No one to ask how his day was. Just quiet echoes in a big, beautiful house. She had heart. She spent her nights in scrubs, caring for strangers with a grace no paycheck could measure. But after back-to-back shifts, she had no warm place to go. Just a cold bench at the bus stop, aching feet, and the sting of a life that kept pushing her to the edge. Their worlds collided on a winter night that neither will forget. He saw her shivering through the windshield, clutching her arms, breath misting in the air. Something inside him paused. He could have driven past like everyone else. But he didn't. He stopped. Rolled down his window. Took off his coat. And simply said, "You shouldn't be out here. Please, let me help." That single moment turned into a shared meal, then a guest room offered, just for a few days. But what began as kindness quickly grew into comfort, and then connection. They talked. They laughed. They healed. She brought life into his empty home. He gave her a safe place to exhale. Neither of them were looking for love, but love found them anyway. Now, years later, that house is no longer quiet. It echoes with joy, music, and family dinners. Because sometimes, family isn't who you're born with, it's who stops for you when you're freezing, and chooses to stay. She didn't ask for help. The cold stung her skin as she waited for a late-night bus that might never come. Her shift had ended hours ago, but she stayed late to cover for another nurse. It wasn't just her job, it was who she was. Always giving, always strong. But that night, her strength was fading. Her body ached, her spirit was tired, and her hands were numb. Still, she stood in silence, telling herself she'd be fine. That she always was. He didn't expect to care. He had driven past dozens of people like her before, strangers in the dark, each one invisible in their own way. His world was business meetings, investments, and silent dinners in a house far too large for one man. He had long since stopped believing that anything truly meaningful could find him anymore. But that night, something shifted. He saw her. Not just the cold or the fatigue, but her. Something told him to stop. And when he did, he rolled down the window and simply asked, "Do you want to sit somewhere warm?" She hesitated, then nodded. That ride led to a conversation that neither of them saw coming, about loss, about loneliness, about trying to be strong when no one's looking. It didn't feel like a rescue. It felt like recognition. One night turned into a friendship. That friendship turned into healing. And healing turned into something beautiful neither of them had planned for. They didn't find each other by accident. It was timing. Grace. Fate. Two broken lives, intersecting at just the right moment, became one shared story of hope. He wasn't looking to rescue anyone. In fact, he didn't believe in rescue stories. His life was structured, guarded, lived behind gates and tinted windows. He had money, influence, and everything people chase, but none of it filled the quiet. He had learned to keep his heart locked tight, certain that no one truly needed him for who he was. She wasn't expecting kindness. Especially not that night. After a brutal double shift at the hospital, the cold cut deeper than usual. Her bus was late, again, and her fingers were too numb to text anyone even if there was someone to call. But she was used to it. Life had taught her to survive in silence, without asking for favors. Then, in the hush of a frozen street, his car rolled up beside her. He saw her sitting there, barely holding herself upright, and something told him don't keep driving. He got out, wrapped his scarf around her shoulders, and gently said, "You're coming with me." She blinked. Stared. Was he serious? He was. But not in a forceful way, in a way that said, "You matter." That ride home turned into something more, a warm meal, a spare guest room, a quiet understanding that neither of them expected. No pity. No charity. Just two people who had long given up on connection, finding it in the most unexpected way. She brought light into his home. He offered her peace she'd never known. And somewhere between shared breakfasts and late-night talks, a bond grew that was more than romance, it was redemption. He didn't rescue her. She didn't need saving. They found each other. And that changed everything.